Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, April 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 141 days, the game against Michigan in 225 days, and the Ohio State spring game is today. Yes, we will be out at Ohio Stadium for the noon kickoff. You can watch it on BTN if you're not there, and then if you are not there, you can also make sure you follow along with all the post-game coverage that you have come to know and expect at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We'll have all of our usual fun post-game stuff. Lots of other coverage, photos, lots of recruiting news this weekend. So you're going to want to make sure you're at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/Buckeye Huddle for all of that stuff. All right. So one final reminder, if you are going to the game today, avoid the area of John Herrick Drive, Cannon Drive, down kind of by the towers in the southwest corner of Ohio Stadium. There's a bunch of construction there. You're going to want to come in on the north side of the stadium, either on High Street or off of 315 and Lane Avenue. Do not go down towards the bottom right, the bottom left-hand corner of the stadium, the southwest corner, over by the Olentangy River. Lots of construction there. Do not want. Get there early. Enjoy yourself. Should be a beautiful day at Ohio Stadium. All right. So once you get to Ohio Stadium, or once you turn on your TV at noon on BTN, what are you going to see? Today you're going to be hearing directly from Ohio State head coach Ryan Day on that and a whole lot of more things. Got a chance to talk to him in sort of our last chat before the spring game and learned a whole bunch of stuff about that and a bunch more. So let's start with that question. What's the format for today's game?
Looks like we're going to do, scarlet versus gray, but that'll mostly be offense versus the defense so that we can, rotate the way we need to rotate. And we're in pretty decent shape, but, we want to make sure that, we have enough depth. So the plan is to, ones versus ones, twos versus twos. The first couple drives with the ones will be thud, but everything else will be live. So when the twos are out there, and after the first couple drives with the ones, that'll go right to live, and then we'll play 4 quarters. Might be running a little bit in the fourth quarter or the second half, but the goal is to get these guys out there and be live. Get them in front of a good crowd. It's supposed to be a great day. I think we're north of 50,000 seats sold so far, which for midweek is a pretty good number as it's trending. But hoping to get even more on Saturday. Should be a great turnout and a great opportunity for our guys to play in front of a good crowd.
You are probably aware of the big news that came out earlier this week, and this is when that news came out. It was Ryan Day on Wednesday talking about why you are not going to see both of the starting quarterback candidates. Devin Brown out. He will not be playing in the spring game. Here's Ryan Day sharing a little bit more about the story behind that.
Well, it's changed a little bit in that. So Devin actually had a procedure done today on his throwing hand on his finger. So he's not going to be available to play on Saturday. He will be throwing again real soon, but he won't be able to actually play in the game on Saturday. So the other 4 quarterbacks will play. Really important for Kyle and Tristan to get out there and compete. But I think there's been really good quarterback play. This spring there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way, and so we'll kind of see how Saturday goes, and then take a look at the spring and go from there. Yeah, I mean it would be nice to have it be black and white. I can't sit here and tell you it is right now. I think they've both done really good things. I think there's things they both have to improve on. I think if they were sitting right here, they'd both tell you the same thing. I don't think that there's no games or no agenda here. It's 2 guys competing, and in one day one guy has the upper hand, the next day the other guy might have the upper hand, and those reps have been split up evenly. You guys have seen in practice. We've been really making sure we do that. So they know that there's things they need to work on. There's things that they've done well. I guess this is practice 13, right? And that's still not a ton of practices. You get double that in the preseason. So we'll keep building, keep growing, and you just never sure how these things shake out anyways. I guess we know in the past there's times we needed 2 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks, whatever it is, and so I think after the season or after the spring, we'll go through, take a look at the numbers, who grade out a champion, the completion percentage, those types of things too. That'll help us. But for Kyle and Tristan, great opportunity on Saturday to put it on the field, because ultimately you can say that it's the same. It's not. It's just not the same being in the being here and practicing in front of just a small group as opposed to being in the stadium.
Tony Gerderman noted to Ryan Day that there was a little bit of a similarity. Devin Brown and Kyle McCord were locked in a quarterback battle, much as Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins were in the fall of 2017, when Joe Burrow suffered a relatively minor hand injury that required a medical procedure where he had to miss a few weeks. And at that point, Dwayne Haskins kind of secured the backup job. And history went on as it did. Dwayne Haskins had a very nice career at Ohio State. Joe Burrow went on and had a very nice career at LSU. So Tony asked Ryan Day, are you sort of noting any similarities to that? That was the first year that Ryan Day was at Ohio State. Is he getting a little deja vu here?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think that situation, that happened during the fall. And so that really set Joe back that entire fall, and then allowed Dwayne to play in the rivalry game and play in that game and help us win that game. And then it kind of and then it turned into a battle in the spring. This one's different. Devin's been practicing, the majority of the spring. We'll miss a couple practices here and be right back at it. So it's more of a setback than anything else.
The spring game is not the only big piece of news for Ohio State and college football on Saturday. It is also the day the transfer portal opens up again, and it's only open for a couple weeks, so you can expect probably a pretty big flurry of activity, guys coming in, guys going out. How is Ryan Day and the Buckeye program in general, keeping track of that? Do they have someone who's just kind of keeping an eye on the portal at all times?
We have a guy on staff here, Billy Homer, who handles all that. He identifies the guys who are in the portal, evaluates them, and then we have a board and a list and things like that to see if there's anybody out there that fits a need.
Ryan Day was asked where things stand with the right tackle spot. Zen Michalski and Tager Shabola have been kind of battling for that starting spot this spring. No one has won that job yet. And, we've gotten pretty good at sort of interpreting what Ryan Day is saying. This is one of those where you don't have to listen too hard or read too far between the lines to get the idea that this feels like this is really an area of concern for Day right now.
There's been some good things. We're not there ready to name a starter right now. I don't think either of those guys have stepped up. I still think at left tackle too. I think there's been good things, but to say that we're where we're sitting right now, we can say those guys are the starters moving into the preseason. Can't do that. I'd like to say that, but are not there. So a lot of work to be done here in the next few months.
All right, so let's combine a couple of the recent questions and ask what is a very logical follow-up. Okay, if you're not 100% comfortable with right tackle, is that an area where they might be looking for someone in the portal?
I think that's a conversation to have, but we got to kind of go through and see how this next, or the game plays out, see how that looks on film, take the body of work, and then make some decisions from there. But we'll kind of have those conversations and see where we're at. It's a delicate situation for sure, and I think we believe in the guys that we have. Otherwise, we say, yeah, we got to bring in a guy. I think we believe in the guys. We know that they can do it. We're looking for more consistency. I think if you rewind it a year from now, and I was sitting up here and we were asking about Paris at left tackle, I'd be concerned. I was. He came a long way, and so I know these guys can as well. I think Justin does a great job teaching technique, but they're going to have to do that here in the next couple months.
There is always the question of how much you want to read into a performance in the spring game. Sometimes guys will blow up on the spring game and not do a whole heck of a lot during the fall, and then sometimes the guys will have a terrible spring game, and then that will have no bearing at all when it comes to how they play in the fall. Ryan Day was asked sort of how you balance that. How do you measure? How do you weigh what you see during the spring game in terms of importance for what it means in the fall? You're going to hear him reference Justin Fields in the 2019 spring game here, and that is definitely a good example of why one bad day, do not necessarily write someone off just based on one bad day in the spring game.
Well, I remember the game that Justin was in. He actually struggled a little bit early on. And so I think we threw like a long ball on like the 5-yard line to, I forget who it was. And it might have been Ben Vick. Yeah, it was Ben Vick. And it kind of made the day okay because it wasn't a good day leading up to that. And so, that was concerning coming out of that game. I mean, I was concerned at night that night, thinking to myself, all right, do we really have a quarterback here who's ready to play? We knew the talent was there. And so those are the things this time of year you just, you worry about. But it's just another piece of the puzzle. But I think it does tell you when you're in the stadium how things are going. But to think that Justin would have played the way he did that year coming off of that spring game, that wasn't a great indication of how he played, because he certainly played great. Now for him, he had just been in the offense for a couple of months, so that probably played into it. These guys have been in the offense a little longer. Tristan not as much, but certainly Kyle and Devin. So I just think understanding the offense, they're further along than those guys were, and CJ was at that point too.
We talked a minute ago about the right tackle position and some of the concerns there. How about on the other side of the line? Let's talk about Josh Fryer. He's played a bunch there this spring. He's really consistently been the only guy repping with the ones at left tackle. So does that mean he's kind of locked that position down?
He's getting there. I can't sit here and tell you he's got it locked down just yet. Making the transition to left is different. I think Josh certainly has the ability to do it. You can see it on film. For him, it's just the consistency of doing it over and over again. It's very different when you're the starter and you got to do it over an extended period of time than just do it once or twice. He has the ability. He's shown he can do it this spring. If he can just increase the inconsistency, then he will lock it down.
There are guys who have been out pretty much all spring and guys who have been sort of limited all spring. How are they handling those guys on Saturday? What are they doing to get guys like, say, Tommy Eichenberg or Julian Fleming involved a little bit on Saturday?
Yeah, so we'll start off in the warm-ups with a 10-minute individual period. So, the guys who won't be participating in the game, like Trey won't be in the game, Julian, Mac, Tommy, those guys will all do individual drills for about 10 minutes just to get them moving around, get them going, dress them out. And so, for those guys, we'll probably have like a list of, all right, guys who are just flat out. Guys who are doing individual drills. And then, for the most part, guys who are available to play in the game. Yeah.
From the chances we've gotten to watch the team, it feels like the defense and particularly the secondary looking very good. And so how is Ryan Day feeling about that secondary right now entering the spring game?
We've made great strides in the secondary. Been very impressed with our corners. I think Denzel is playing his best football right now. Been just impressed with his offseason, impressed with his approach every day. Got his hands on a lot of balls, had a huge interception in the 2-minute drill the other day. Jordan Hancock has now with a full off season, and now that he's healthy, you're starting to see his potential pop. He came off of that really bad hamstring injury and never was quite himself last year. He's somebody that we got a lot of excitement around. And then Davison has been a great addition. It's been great to see him out there and compete. I think he's raising the level of everybody in that room. Jair Brown has played a little nickel and corner. He has just natural talent and instincts. Jermaine's been out there, Ryan Turner. So, we're starting to get a group in there that Tim's been able to now spend year 2 with. And I think the addition of Davidson and now a year of experience in that group, you're seeing their hands on a lot more balls and challenging throws, which is really exciting. The safety position has been much more solid. Lathan and Proc and Sonny and some of the guys back there have done a nice job. Jahard Carter was playing well about midway through. Had a little bit of an injury that'll I don't know whether he's going to be available or not on Saturday, but up until that point, he had shown, again, kind of raised the level of everybody back there. It's year 2 in the system, more experience, and a couple added pieces. I've been encouraged.
We mentioned earlier this is a big weekend for recruiting for the Buckeyes, and that has been an area where they have really been excelling recently. They have been red hot on the recruiting trail, brought in a whole bunch of prospects recently, and really started building that class on offense and then even a little bit on defense recently. So is Ryan Day a believer in momentum in recruiting? Is that a real thing?
Well, I think when you start to see guys jump on board and recruit each other, I think that's a sign of how things are going in recruiting. I think it's a sign of how people view the program and the culture and what's going on here. I think that's probably what you're seeing right now. When guys are coming on these visits, they're getting around our players. They're getting around our coaches. They see who we are. They see the foundation of the program here. They see not only a program that competes nationally for championships every single year, but also has a culture that you want to send your son to be a part of. And that combined with the city of Columbus, Buckeye Nation, there's a lot of excitement right now. And like you said, there is momentum. And I think when you mention that, it's probably some of the recruits jumping on board and then recruiting the other recruits to come on, because that's the great thing about committing early is that you get to actually have an impact on your recruiting class and your teammates. And I say it all the time, how cool is that to be able to lead your recruiting class or your side of the ball. And we listen to those guys because they tell us the real information. Sometimes the recruits they put on a different face in front of the coaches, but behind closed doors they're real with the recruits, and so we take a lot of their feedback back. And that's that, and just access to the program are the benefits to jumping in early, which again some of the guys are doing now.
Here's a question that a lot of Ohio State fans are going to be asking themselves during the game today. How do I know whether I should be happy or sad? Every long pass that the offense gets is a long pass given up by the defense. Every time the defense gets an interception, well, that's an interception thrown by an Ohio State quarterback. So this is sort of a zero-sum game on every single play. So when you're Ryan Day or when you're just sitting there watching at home, how do you assess what you're seeing? How do you assess the film, what's happening during the spring and even during the spring game today?
Well, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to take some of the emotion out of practice when you're competing against each other, which is what we've done, I think, a really good job of, is create a competition this spring. There can be, a play that, gets a lot of attention and kind of creates a lot of juice and energy on one side of the ball. And then, you come back and quietly the other group is getting a sack or is throwing a long pass for a touchdown. And so you have to just identify, what's really going on in practice. And not get caught up in the emotion of everything, because I think our guys have brought great energy at practice, and we love that. We want that environment. But as coaches, you have to identify what's real and what isn't. And when you're playing, good on good, and it gets really, really hard. I mean, like those plays, 3rd and 5, game on the line. What's the play? The first play of inside drill is great, and the first play of 7-on-7 is great. But when it's a team drill and we're really trying to evaluate, how guys can operate in those game-like environments. That's where we're making our biggest evaluations. But to your point, that's our biggest selling point in recruiting, is that you're going against really good players on both sides of the ball. So if it becomes lopsided one way or another, then there's probably an issue. If we have to overcompensate schematically on either side of the ball because there's just a matchup issue, then who knows, right? I mean, somebody trying to cover Marvin, that's hard. Someone trying to block JT, that's hard. So you have to try to identify that. I mean, those are great players, but you also need to win your share too if we're going to go win championships and reach our goals. So it's great evaluation. That's one of the great things about being in practice at Ohio State, is you're going against great players, and I think that builds confidence. Like if you can do that, if you can block JT or Jack, or Kenyatta coming off the edge, you feel pretty good about most of the guys who are going to play that you can do the same thing. I think that's what gave us great confidence in the Georgia game is, we play against good players every day, and so we went up against them. I think, our guys felt like, okay, and we go against these guys every day in practice. And so, but that's part of it. But to your point, I mean, if you're losing 8 out of 10, that's not good. We got an issue here. And so you look at the trends, you go through the entire spring, and then you make some evaluations.
College football coaches love to have themes. They love to have little phrases, catchphrases that they'll repeat over and over again. So we've seen tough love, we've seen fight, we've seen competitive stamina. So to Ryan Day, what is the theme of this season for Ohio State?
Well, I think you don't want to go away from your core values and your culture. So ours is fight to become the best version of yourself. That's not going to change. And our motto is tough love. But to your point, there are messaging and things that are unique to each team. Our focus this entire offseason and this spring has just been competition and competing, winning, and finding a way to win. It's one thing to work hard, and that's great, lifting and running and training and all that. But it's another thing, if I'm going against somebody else, there's a winner and there's a loser. Winner and loser. And so how do you win? When you're going up against your equal, how do you win? You can't just win with talent anymore. You have to find your edge. So that's been really the major focus. And, if you come to our practice, what you guys have heard, some of the winner-loser stuff, that's been a huge emphasis.
Tough love is kind of a little bit unusual. It's kind of a combination of things that they've combined, and it's a phrase you've heard in other contexts. But what does the phrase tough love mean to Ryan Day when he talks about that in relation to the football program?
Well, the game of football is tough. We know that. I mean, physically tough. When you stand over one of your players who has a broken leg at the 35-yard line and, you got to cart him off the field. I mean, it's tough. It's tough mentally, what these guys have to do in terms of preparation day-to-day and meetings, bringing it every single day and just that mental battle. And then it's tough emotionally. You just think about some of the emotional swings we've had here in the last, 6 months. But that's the game of football, and that's also life. But it's certainly the game of football. You have got to be tough to play the game of football, period. But we motivate through love. And, when you, who do you think, who do you love the most in your life? Usually it's your family and close friends. So what would you do for them? You kill somebody for them, right? I mean, that's your family. So there's nothing more powerful or sustainable, in my opinion, than love. And if you love your coaches and you love your teammates like you love your family, then we got a chance to really do something special. So when you hear that term love, you kind of think, well, it's a different term. But what does that mean? What does that have to do with football? I think it means everything to do with football. Loving the game, loving your teammates, loving your coaches. So when you combine the two of those, tough love, and that's kind of what it's all about.
If the Buckeyes are going to dip back into the transfer portal after the spring, how do they find the balance there between there's still months to go before the game, and the guys on your team are probably going to get better before that game actually happens, before they need to do anything for real. So how do you balance trying to judge how much they're going to improve versus trying to bring in an immediate help to boost the level of play overall versus not screwing up team chemistry, wanting to bring in someone to just improve things overall? How do you balance all of those factors when making a decision whether to pursue and then potentially bring in someone in the transfer portal?
I mean, it's kind of what they deal in the NFL with, right? With the free agency and the draft. It's the same thing we're dealing with right now, and making sure that we have what we need, knowing that our culture matters, our chemistry matters, our leadership matters. As you guys know, we've been very careful to add pieces here, but we know it's a necessary thing. And so we have to sit down at the end of spring and identify what positions do we feel good about, where do we have depth that we feel strong about, because we know we're going to lose guys along the way and guys are going to have to step up. So if it's somebody that we feel like is at starter level and we're okay there, that's great. If we feel like there isn't someone there that is at starter level, then maybe you need to add a piece. If we feel like it's a depth issue, then we'll add somebody like Tristan was a great example of that. You talk about somebody who's come in and done an unbelievable job here. He came in with no expectations, really with the plan that he wants to be a coach. And so he sat in meetings with us. He's been in staff meetings with us. It's almost like an apprentice, what he's doing right now. He's coming in as a player, but he also wants to be a coach. And so what a cool opportunity for him, and something hopefully that we can build on moving forward as guys who want to get into coaching, who are quarterbacks, who can come in and provide that maturity, but also learn the game. And that's what he's doing right now, and he's doing a great job. But that was an area that we felt, we need some depth there. And it's hard to do, and so that's what we look at. Do we have somebody to start a level, and, do we have enough depth?
Kind of a related question here. You sort of have potential with some of these young guys. These are all guys who are relatively highly touted. When you're looking at the offensive line, you had a bunch of 4-star prospects along the offensive line. So obviously the potential is there, but they're not there yet. So how do you balance weighing the potential that you could have of the guys on your roster versus something you might perceive as a little bit more of a sure thing, someone who's maybe already sort of shown the ability to do this at the college level at a different program who you might be able to bring in through the portal?
Well, even when you bring someone in, you don't really know. You think you know. It's like in recruiting. If we knew all the time, then we wouldn't be worried about this. It's like you try to do the best you can to evaluate it. But again, we put so much, probably more than anybody else in the country, into the guys who have been in the program for a few years, and that matters. They understand the culture. They've been through it with Coach Mick and all that, and so we'd rather not. But sometimes there's times we feel like we need to, then we will.
When we're talking about recruiting, when we're talking about the transfer portal, there are 3 letters that seem to come up in almost all of those conversations. Those letters, of course, same with me, NIL. So That is an area where Ohio State seems to be a little more organized than they were this time last year. So how much is Ryan Day involved in all that? Is he like a point person on all this stuff? Is he, weighing, hey, this guy, we need to get this guy more money? Is he deciding this, we need to reallocate what we're doing?
Yeah, certainly no. I can't do that, and I don't do that. But I am trying to circulate the conversation to understand for everybody in Buckeye Nation, the city of Columbus, the state of Ohio, to normalize NIL, because it's not going anywhere, and it's a critical part of our recruiting. And we've had a lot of people who have embraced it, and because of that, we're starting to build some momentum here in recruiting. But we're going to need more and more help. That's just the way it is. And so I've tried to do the best I can to, again, normalize the conversation and help our guys with opportunities. Not that I can directly do that, but by talking to folks and let them understand that this is okay. This is something that, is important to our program, is part of my job now.
For more than a year now, you have heard the NCAA and some of its college sports leaders kind of looking towards Washington, D.C. and sort of hoping that Congress might sort of bail them out of the NIL situation, put in maybe some restrictions, some more guardrails for NIL. Is that something that Ryan Day is hoping for?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think the biggest struggle that a lot of us have, I know that I have, is when we're talking about something like this, and there are other things like this right now in college football, there's really nothing to compare it to. There's no benchmark. There's no precedence for something like this. And that makes it hard because sometimes you don't know where you're going. But I do know that some sort of guardrails, like you're saying, around this would certainly help.
One of the storylines of the spring is that Ryan Day has given up play calling, probably for the most part, at least for now, and sort of turned those keys over to Brian Hartline. So how has Brian Hartline developed over the course of the spring in his new role?
I think first off, on the offensive side of the ball, the only way to really allow them an opportunity to progress is to kind of take a step away. I think it's hard when you're in that situation. I've been in that situation before, and the first thing you ask is, what does the coach expect me to do here, as opposed to what's best? And so I think they've been navigating that well. Certainly he and Justin, work well together. They're both very bright. Keenan, Corey, Tony. I mean, it's a good group in there, and they know the system, which is great. But a big part of that is how does the system, adapt to this group, because this is a different group than we had last year, and every year it changes. So really bright group, and I think it's been great to see the new dynamic in place.
Well, again, we will be out at Ohio Stadium all day today for that Ohio State spring game. It should be an awesome day. The forecast is incredible. Should be a great, great day to enjoy some football, soak up some springtime sunshine, and just enjoy a day out at Ohio Stadium. You don't get very many of those during the course of a year. So make sure, if you are thinking about it, go ahead, take it out. Go take a day. Go enjoy the spring sunshine at Ohio Stadium. Take your kids. It's a great way to bring little kids, let them experience Ohio Stadium and see Brutus and all that fun stuff for not very much money. And parking is free. You can park pretty much anywhere. Just get there early. That is my only advice. Other than avoid the southwest area of the stadium, my only other advice would be, if you're going, get there early. It will make your life and your experience a lot easier and a lot better. So that will do it for now. We will be back later on today after the game, have our post-game show, again, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Lots of insight and analysis on what we saw, what we learned, what we heard, all that kind of stuff. We'll have coverage, we'll have photo galleries, all that good stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com coming up today, and at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Thank you guys all for joining us. We'll see you out at Ohio Stadium.